In this episode, we welcome Robert Madsen, president of ULOC Mini Storage Group and the president of the Canadian Self-Storage Association. Robert's journey in the industry is truly unique. He grew up in self-storage, helping his family pioneer some of the very first facilities in Canada back in the late 1970s. Since then, he's continued that legacy, leading ULOC Mini Storage across British Columbia while also championing operators across the country through his leadership at the CSSA. In this conversation, we dig into everything, from what it was like growing up with self-storage in his blood, to how technology and AI are shaping Canadian operations, to the different challenges and opportunities facing independents in a world where large REITs are becoming more active in Canada. Robert brings an incredible blend of deep operational insight, forward-thinking views on tech, and a real passion for protecting the entrepreneurial spirit of the industry. You're going to hear lessons from his personal journey, some hot takes on automation and customer experience, and his vision for where storage is headed over the next decade. Let's dive right in. Robert, thanks so much. We're really pumped to have you. I think you are actually our first Canadian operator on the pod.
Nice.
So really excited to dive into everything self-storage in Canada. And obviously, I know you know more than that too. So a lot of other things.
Well, I'm really excited to be here to contribute from a Canadian perspective, but all things self-storage. And you can fire away any questions you have. I'm loving joining your podcast here today.
Just to start off, let's go back to the beginning. I was reading a little bit about you, and I mean, it seems like you literally grew up in storage, right?
Yeah. You know what? I was, I was probably only 8, 9, 10 years old when my parents started trucking me into their newly acquired converted storage facility. And while they were busy working away, they gave me a broom and stuff, and I just wandered a converted warehouse storage facility. So I literally grew up in my summers when I wasn't in elementary school, hanging out at the storage site and doing all things storage, mostly maintenance and messing around with stuff. And it's a family business. So both my mom and my dad were there, and my grandparents actually, who were also business partners. And watched them build lockers, clean, sweep. We built it out of,
That's
it was
amazing.
the perfect unit mix. It was built to order. So it was empty floors. And as customers came, we built the locker size they needed. So they had to come back in the afternoon to actually store.
That's actually pretty brilliant.
Pretty, when you want to get
Modular?
the
Modular.
Yeah, we need
facility.
to roll back the time machine.
Yeah, and it meets demand, right? There's no waste. You're meeting exactly what clients and customers want. They just have to come back in the afternoon. So we build it.
Why is that not a thing anymore? Obviously, I mean, I like the modular concept. That's cool.
Yeah, I think nowadays, obviously, with contractors and metal, we just take a stab at the best unit mix to fit our area, and we build a general scope, and off we go, off and running. So we've definitely been able to identify sort of best unit mix percentages, depending on the demographics where it's located, but we still cheat a little, because guess what? We can move the walls inside, right? So if we build too many 5x5s and 10x30s are all the rage, obviously we can start taking out walls. We'll have a lot more access doors to that big space, which is a selling feature because you can come at your storage from all angles. But that's what we do now. We just move walls to meet demand based on economy.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting hearing that you're, family owned, even your grandparents were involved in everything. It must have been, first of all, I think myself as a kid running around a self-storage facility, sometimes, could be cool, creepy. There's many doors. I don't know if you've seen Severance. It just kind of throws me back. It's like, as a kid, it must have been fun to just run around. I'm curious, early on in those days, obviously you've kept with it. What about the industry fascinated you enough to continue in your parents' footsteps and versus like going on your own and doing something else?
Well, you know what? So I did have a period where I did leave, but definitely up to university. it was a great evening job. It was a great job to work night shift and weekends. Great to understand the maintenance, upkeep, all the components of storage. So, as a young kid, you just take what's given to you, right? And then obviously, as you need a little bit of income to take girls out on dates and stuff, you pick up your evening job while you go to school and university. But what did happen actually is I left for another career in airport management. So I was one of the operations managers at the Vancouver International Airport, which at the time was an airport that had just privatized in Canada, which was rare at the time. And we were building a model to compete against SeaTac, LAX, Portland. And it was almost like the entrepreneurial roots that I had already had, where you're making these great competitive decisions to produce a great product. It's not a government airport anymore. It's like, how do we get a route from SeaTac and how do we learn best practices? And all those skills combined. And I loved problem solving. I loved, very passionate. I love, we work, so you might as well have fun while you work and accomplish great things. But of course, suddenly I realized the corporate world has silos. Sometimes a department in a company is competing against another department, and that's not necessarily for the benefit of the company. And, airports don't give stock options, and the harder you work, you don't necessarily get more pay. And there are politics too. There's a bureaucracy to a large corporate organization. Thus, I realized as time went through, I'm like, that self-storage business, you know what? Like, you're sort of your master your own domain. Work hard, it pays off. Work less, you get less. But you really are in charge of your own destiny. I love the industry. I love the teams of people that we can provide careers for. Love our diverse clients who you really get to know. And thus I came back. I came back to sort of manage my own destiny. And at the time when I came back, gosh, that was over 24 years ago. So I was a different age. And in the storage industry, there were a lot of first generation, second generation at the storage shows. And they were excited to see an example of a family multi-generational. So I can tell you I was pretty popular with first generation parents in self-storage at the Vegas and shows, because obviously they all wanted their kids in it, but they couldn't figure out how to do it. And I basically told them, you got to let them go. Let them go. If they may thrive in another career and celebrate that, but they may also say, hey, I had a pretty good thing going there. And I can make my own decisions and bring my own passion and skill set and return back to storage. So I love the entrepreneurial side of it.
That's awesome. I'm curious, did you take anything from like the airport management side of things and bring it back to
Tons.
ULOC? Yeah.
Tons. Airports have a lot of operating procedures. They have way too many acronyms, but they're really good at creating standardized procedures. Obviously, you're dealing with a large amount of people in an airport, both in the airport authority, but also the interpersonal relationships. So there was that. Being a large organization too, there was a whole HR department that really worked hard to develop, encourage, focus people. So I learned a lot of people development skills. You definitely learn to deal with tons of emergencies. We probably had 3 to 6 emergency landings per 5 days. So you get pretty relaxed at storage emergencies. You're like, hey, no one's going to die. I think we got this. You definitely get more calm in dealing with.
You said every couple days, every.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, you know what? It's missed in the media. Actually, it's really funny because the media will pick up on an emergency landing and it will make the headlines, and
Sure.
I'll sit back and laugh about all the ones they missed, right? So they'll be like, oh, they got one, they sensationalized it. But in reality, because air transportation, commercial air transportation in North America is extremely safe. They have like a little light goes on. It could be the light that's malfunctioning, but it causes a whole operating procedure, and it causes a safe procedure to deal with it in an emergency landing. So, most air travel is incredibly safe, but there's a lot of precautions that result in a lot of false alarms, I guess, per day. And that happens, bomb threats, they happen. Fires, obviously medical emergencies. I remember one day there were 12 heart attacks in one day in the terminal. And you get really good at calmly and methodically and effectively dealing with stuff as it comes, and you're planned, you trained for it. And I took all of that back to storage. Even at the airport, they would send me on missions where I would call into LAX or SeaTac or Sky Harbor in Phoenix, Portland, and we would go do a tour. Like I'd meet the operations department, I'd spend a day or two there. We'd share best practices because it's actually a very sharing industry, but we are competing for routes too. We're competing for passengers, competing for cargo. That's money. And I was fortunate that the airport I was at in Vancouver was considered a show home. So we used it to showcase the world on selling our services in contracts. So we could go contract to Bermuda or Midway in Midway Airport in the East Coast, or different airports in the world where we would sell our operational skill set or our marketing skill set. But you know what? It all helped. It all helped me in self-storage, and definitely appreciate having my own business.
It was an honor on my bingo card to learn so much about airport management today. This is really cool, and there's a lot of
they're awesome. Yeah, they're awesome.
It's so cool to dive into. One of my favorite books is Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande.
Great book.
And I just learned so much about you've got to be so, obviously it's about pilots and the procedures that they go through and all these emergency situations, light flashes, something's not working, and just cool, calm, collected, follow the procedure, and you're going to land this thing. I want to dive in mom, dad, second generation, third generation, you decide they do the good parenting thing and let you go off and be your own individual for, however long it was. Was there a point in your airplane, career where you're okay, what was that point where you're all right, time to get back into storage. Let's go. This is the thing that I'm about to jump back into. What caused that transition back?
Yeah, you know what? There was a couple things that were connected, not connected. But again, you're working for a corporate environment. I was a young guy climbing up the corporate ladder. I was in middle management. Had a great career ahead of me, but it gets pretty tight in the upper echelon. There's only so many directors, and it gets competitive in those silos. And the cool thing for me at the airport was knowing that I could return back to a business like self-storage that I had some training in, obviously family business. I could always make the right decision in a corporate environment. So I was never covering my rear. But I realized everyone around me was covering their rear. So often you would make a decision, not the best decision for the airport, but the best decision to cover your rear. And I felt we lost a lot of efficiency. You're working, you can never get better than 75% good. So I realized, man, going back to the family biz, and self-storage is a great industry. We got there's so much that happens in running and owning and working with teams and customers in self-storage. You've got all the aspects of business, and I love it. Lots of problem solving coming down your pipe. But it's also a great industry too. You've got some real estate, you've got your cash flow. It's nowhere near as people heavy as a restaurant or different services. And I found returning back to family business, which I should note, family business. I haven't talked about all the difficulties of family business, but those cannot be ignored. But returning back to family business is fun. You get to implement your ideas, and again, you're pulling a lot of levers for your success, and you're evolving. My kids, obviously, we have a lot of storage shows in Las Vegas, and they always ask me, "Hey, did you go gambling?" And I'm like, why would I go gamble at the table when I gamble in some ways every day? We make business investments, but the difference is I'm not dealing with the house who controls the odds to a higher degree. I can pull the levers, and sure, I make mistakes, but I respond fast. And our efforts help produce great results. And I see the happiness of our clients in our great product. And we've got career team members that are, at the 15, 17, 20, 21 years with us. And I think that's awesome. It's awesome. So, storage has a lot of magic to it that people
it is awesome. Yeah, it's there's so much to unpack there. I mean, I think the first one is like, we didn't have talking about Rodolfo, Kyle, and our other co-founder Chuck, the family operation in order to like lean into. We kind of stumbled into storage, but we've really, really loved it here. We're also, they're also probably really stoked that we're not family members, because on holidays they don't have to see me and they can like, have their own, we don't have to, think about work. You guys have holidays together and it's like, oh, that's my coworker.
We do throw some pretty sweet like holiday parties, I would say. They're remote.
So
they're through
that's true.
You should.
Zoom,
so you should. Yeah, you know what? We work hard and we work together with our team so much. It's such a big part of our life. You got to have fun. It's a very important part of it.
Absolutely. So, Robert, I know you often often say that your customers entrust you and the team, right, with more than just stuff. Can you go into that? Like any memorable anecdotes or stories as to like why you take this so seriously?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I can go into that for sure. So, as any storage manager, team member, working the front desk, call center would tell you and attest, we should start with psychology degrees in people first, because you're almost like a psychologist or a therapist. People are showing up at your counter. You don't know what's coming, but there's always this greater need. There's always stuff going on in their life. And I find it amazing how many people come and they divulge like everything at the counter. We should have a couch, with this we're in. And people really share what's going in their lives, both good and bad. Obviously, there are multiple reasons why people need storage. There's usually, it's not I just going to pick up that storage bar like a candy bar because I need one. It's always a big move. Like they're celebrating the move to a new house, or they're celebrating a divorce, or not celebrating, but they're going through divorce and they got to downsize.
That's so true.
Or there's bankruptcy, or someone passed away, or their kids have gone to college and this is the big move of stuff out of the house, right? So there's always these big life events. And I find we get people sometimes at their most vulnerable, they need to share. And in the search for finding the right space, they really let it all out. And being able to be out there on the service side to, we pride ourselves in a great product. We don't want to waste time. We want to have something really nice and a great storage locker that's clean and safe and it's perfectly serving the needs, because we recognize we're one small widget in the problem or need that the person's having. But we get to, it takes a skill set to take all that in, because some people are going through some pretty wild things.
Oh, I think we need a new podcast. We'll call it Counter Confessionals. Yo,
Kyle, write that down.
They used to have that in the magazine. The magazines, the Minico magazine used to have. I think it was called Mini Clips or Lockers from the Stories from the Locker or something. It was always in the back page of the nice. Early editions, and it was always stories like that, and they were awesome.
Robert, are we going to spin out a new podcast?
I'm just saying, bring it back. Bring it back. We're going to go. What is old is new again.
Exactly.
So even to that point, like, so this is interesting. Like, first time, like, I hear an operator really dive into the emotional part of it, or psychology of things there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you train your team to handle some of those conversations, right? Or at least show empathy, right? It sounds very hard.
Yeah, I think now I've learned this through trial and error. You actually have to hire right. So you do need people. Like, we need people, right? We need salespeople, but they have to have this underwriting skill where they are so comfortable. Again, you don't know what's coming through that door or what's going to be the conversation on the phone. So you pretty much had to be prepared for whatever's coming, and be compassionate, empathetic, hear the person out. But you do become, and many times we have lots of examples where you become the person's friend. We still offer a product. We still have to do rent increases, and we still have to run the business. But by having employees and team members that have the ability to talk to people, which is it's a tough skill these days, right? I think it's actually diminishing, unfortunately, but having that skill set and then still doing the business side too, it's tough. But at the end of the day, it's in the hiring process. And you got to hire right, ask the right questions, and sift through folks with procedures in place to really find those gems. But it is getting harder to find all those skills. That's why AI, I think, is getting pretty dominant. We even AI train, and you can AI analyze our call center conversations. And AI's, man, it's good. Like it's really giving constructive feedback that it's right every time almost. And you're like, yeah, we could be better there. We could have.
All right, well, let's dive in.
Yeah.
We have a whole tech portion of this, but you beat us to it. Like, so what are you seeing on that end? So you're going through and kind of analyzing, getting some type of scoring. Is it more for analyzing like customer conversation, or is it more to train your team? Both.
It is primarily to understand the quality of our calls to make sure we're hitting our conversion ratios and we're having great conversion success. But it's looking for how we can improve all those conversations that we're having. So so we're using AI. It's just one of the many ways we use AI, but AI if you put the right variables and you ask the right questions and you task AI properly, it's pretty flawless. Like I'll forget stuff in a sales call. I'll be like, I missed that point of asking that. Or AI, if you've put all the inputs in, it's not missing it. It will always in a microsecond. It'll remember all the tasks it's to be looking for. So I hate to say it, but it's pretty good at helping us evolve and improve continually in our sales skills and make sure we're hitting our metrics, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like with everything coming out today, AI is poised to impact nearly every industry that we're in. And so I'm just curious, like diving deeper into like the general scope of things. Where do you see AI or automation in general having a genuinely practical role in self storage in the next few years?
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm happy you tone it down to next few years because then I can sift through a fewer variables. But I sort of think about I was at a storage conference years ago, many years ago, probably in mid early 2000s, and we were talking about websites. And there was a web developer, and they said, "Hey, this is important. We need to get on this." And the room had a lot of hardcore storage people who had been in it for decades, and they said, "I don't need a website. That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to stick with Yellow Pages and all these things." And no one took it on. And look at us today, right? I mean, if you're not on there, you're a buying opportunity because you're missing out on revenue, and like there's so much that websites have provided us, and now we even we do contracts off web. So AI as well. I find we're just the tip of the iceberg. I go to the Consumer Electronics Show every year in Vegas in January, and just a couple of trade shows ago, ChatGPT came out in November. This show's in January. I would say less than half the people on that trade show floor even knew what ChatGPT was. And the folks that did, though, it was like, what are you talking? You're talking another crazy language. Like, how is that possible? Well, the next trade show, 95% of the people in that trade show knew what ChatGPT was, and they were using it in their innovations. And then here we are, just like, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years later. It is crazy, the possibilities. They're endless. And as you know, there's a new AI product coming out every day. So, you can't focus on them all, but from every storage operator, and I work with my team, my team has heard me talk about AI continually. Like, how about this? And how about that? I love the checklist manifesto. We talk about that and how you can use AI to create the checklist, right?
Nice.
But I realized my team didn't get it. not until I actually sat them down and I said, let's build a 52-week training program right now in this meeting. And let's fill it for 52 weeks of goal setting content. And let's add a quiz at the end that's multiple choice, 100% pass. And let's add the training tools and let's add role play. And they watched me do that in one meeting on ChatGPT, 52 weeks of content. And then I scripted it. And that script, we didn't do in the meeting, but since then, we've taken that script, plugged it into AI. We've got our own video production. Like it's,
yeah.
And I heard my senior leadership team, some of the members, full out, they did say, wow, I didn't realize when you said AI, I had no idea this was even possible. I was using it to like figure out what recipe I should cook today with my ingredients.
Maybe write a better subject line.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. It's there's a huge opportunity. Sorry,
the story is like really, no, you're fine. The story is like really flipped, right? I mean, you go back to like the Shopify CEO's the recent manifesto, and basically he's come out and said like a non-use of AI for employees to do a task requires justification, right? Like he's saying you need to justify why you're not using it to do your job versus like it you know, the default go-to needs to be, I'm going to go use AI first. And then when it doesn't work, I can justify not using it. And it's really interesting to have seen that over the last 3 years because of how efficient these models have become, right?
Yeah. Well, and so for our teams, we're going to take AI into all our team members, but we realize we can't just talk about it. We have to, for each individual member, get to that wow moment because that's their break. That's where they're telling us we just broke their brain. And they now see the possibilities, and now we want them to apply it to their job task. Because I know even for our managers, I know today we're missing an opportunity probably to reduce a couple hours or I don't know, 1 to 8 hours per week of their tasks when they understand AI can help them save that time. And that's monumental. If we can save that much time per site per week, like that's awesome.
How are you like that? That is a huge unlock, right? A couple of days ago, I read, at the very inception of ChatGPT, they kind of broke records because in 5 days they had, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like 100 million users, and they're like, wow, craziest, like fastest app. They're doing that now in a day or something like that, or less than a day. But I was just in a conference, and still there's still people that don't know too much about it, which is kind of mind-boggling. But it is more and more in your face nowadays, for sure. So I'm curious, like, so I love the idea of having your team really start experimenting, right, for their own individual functions and whatnot as they're contributing to the overall business. Within that project plan that you started working on with everyone, is that something that you started layering down and kind of, hey, like tasking your team members to start creating and experimenting, or how are you guys promoting that sharing of knowledge across the organization?
Yeah. And actually we're, to be fair, we're right in the middle of it right now. And what we're doing is we are using that, again, we've been talking about it for a while, but I could see that, guess what? Talking about it isn't proving it. We're not moving the dial. So our recent discussions were actually, how do we take that through each level and get that one-on-one factor where all of a sudden, just like anything like skiing or snowboarding, there's that moment where you've been doing it for a while, you don't quite get it, but then you stand up on the board and it clicks and you surf away or you sail away on whatever you're doing. And
maybe that's not for me on that example.
We each have our passions, but I think we have to find that is what we're in searching from top to bottom. So if I can instill my leadership team and my executives to have that moment, then the next step is to have them go to their teams, because I can't reach everyone tomorrow. Them to go to their teams and find that moment too. And find each time they find that wow moment, we know, hey, we've ignited the flame. Now just give them enough, like keep them going, keep that burning until it's a good fire of passion for AI. So we are, Yeah, we got to start at the senior leadership group, into the managers to team members, and team members all the way through, to the point that they'll probably be talking to customers and they'll be like, check this out, check this training video. That's not even a real person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. I have one last thing I just been
Sure.
dying to ask you. I just have to ask, like, how the heck did you secure one of the best domain names in Canadian self-storage?
Selfstorage.ca.
Selfstorage.ca. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's awesome.
How did you even? What's the story behind that? Was it luck? Did you plan it all along? Like what happened there?
It was just us just doing what we do and not even realizing what we were across.
Nice.
I don't know, 2000, 2001, 99, whenever we acquired that storage name. So my dad, who was a past director of the SSA in the States early on in the 80s, loved always to see what was coming down the pipe, just like AI for us today, right? Always exploring and learning and saying, hey, can we use that in our operation to make us better? So tech was a big deal. My dad got a computer like early on. The school didn't even have a computer back then. And we started with the very simplest of programming, and logo was like this crazy language. And we started using the computers. And what happened is, as new stuff came out, we just kept going. So websites, pretty new. Actually, for websites were extremely new. Securing a domain, no one was like, there were obviously, even us talking about AI today, for the next 3 years, we're going to be AI advantage if we stay on top of it, because there's going to be things people are just discovering 3 years from now that we're talking about now. So same thing with domains. The funny part about getting the selfstorage.ca domain was, at the time, unavailable, or pardon me, untaken, was probably, I'm not going to say selfstorage.com, but maybe org.org, ministorage.com. Like, there were all these other suggestions. I could have been just like, park all those, but we're like, no, we don't need that. No, we're good. Selfstorage.ca. That's we got what we came for. We had no idea. That was, we knew we liked it, and we knew it's Canadian and it's an awesome name, but we actually turned down other domains that were just they're incredible domains today. But so it's just, I guess we sort of didn't know what we had in front of us, but we knew what we wanted, and we were just early in. Yeah.
You guys picked a good one. And that's a good transition into like Canada in general. Like, I'm dying to pick your brain around the Canadian market, just to kind of like kick things off around Canada. Like, what's the biggest misconception people have around the difference between the Canadian market and the US markets?
Yeah, the biggest difference is that there's an assumption that we're homogeneous, we're the same across the border, in that a Canadian demand, or a Canadian consumer for storage is the same as an American consumer for storage. And that is not the case. So Canadians don't consume as much square footage of storage as an American. Also, our businesses are not as, like, our business entrepreneurship and growth. So for the commercial demand of self-storage is nowhere near as high. Like, we just don't move as much. We don't demand as much. Sometimes we don't have the income for as much. And definitely on the business, our businesses are more conservative. So we don't have a big business growth factor. Whereas, I look into the States, and it's awesome. American entrepreneurs are always doing stuff, good and bad, right? They're good times, bad times. They're figuring out a need, which generates a need for storage, usually in their business model. We are just conservative, and we're smaller, and we're spread across a bigger landmass, right? So I always say, California has more storage facilities than all of Canada. So you have one
it's
state
wild to think about.
that is far larger. Yet we're massive. Like, the country is bigger than continental US. So I always say you got to sort of down factor everything by 10 almost. Our population's, I think it's approaching 41 million. You guys are, I don't know, we're past 350, I'm guessing. So you do have to scale everything back. We have 4 major cities. We don't move as much. We're not as transient. Canadians are not, an American coming out of university will be like, hey, I want to go to university. I have no problem hopping to another city. Whereas in Canada, it's a big deal to go cross country. So I find demand for storage in the United States produces a higher square foot per capita. Canada is lower, and I think a lot of people look at Canada and they say, hey, it's unmet opportunity. I don't think it's that. It's not as good as it seems. So you do have to tone it down. Our banking system is definitely more conservative. It's not an entrepreneurial banking system. Our government is definitely not as entrepreneurial. So you have to the gas comes off the pedal a lot over on our side. And I think that gets missed.
It's interesting. I'm curious, like where the nuts and bolts come into this, right? Like, so more conservative, less movement, maybe less populated cities, et cetera.
Mhm.
Like, what are the biggest impacts to the business model that you guys are seeing there? Is that, hey, we can't offer discounts the same way that people in the US can, ECRIs are slightly different, like pricing's more sensitive. Like, where is the nuts and bolts of how that you
Yeah.
guys feel impacted the most?
Yeah, I think a big challenge we have is costs and taxation. So, you know what? In Vancouver, we have parcels of land. One, it's hard to find a parcel of land that is zoned for storage, and that's not uncommon throughout lots of places in North America. However, the cost in a city to buy an acre of land, it can be 1 to 20 million an acre. And the more you go into the city, it's approaching the 20 million an acre, and you can't build storage on that expensive land. I've seen a couple of U.S. operators come up here, and they're like, "Why is it the same price as Manhattan? Because this isn't Manhattan." And so that cost is making it really challenging for operators to build and expand. Then we have a bit of scarcity in land, which also pushes up price, which also causes cities not to zone it. And then we got to pass those costs on to consumer too, right? So downtown Vancouver, it's $7. It's like $700 for a 10 by 10 Canadian. So that shrinks down a lot. But you go into a lot of the states, it's still not past 150 at 10 by 10.
Is that a hidden advantage for operators? Like, because then, I mean, would that mean less competition nearby from new builds, or am I thinking about that wrong?
Sure. Yeah, you nailed it. It's a barrier to entry for sure. If the border didn't count and I had $10 million, well, you can't buy a single facility in Vancouver for 10 million. But there's parts of the States you could buy a 6 facility portfolio, well diversified in a community, right? And so let's go do that as opposed to we've had a couple single facility, multi-story, 5-6 story facilities that were in the 50 to 60,000 net rentable, and they traded for 40 to 46 million Canadian. Like, that's a lot of money for one site, and for 40 to 50,000 net rental. You can go take that money and do spend way less, so reduce your risk, feel a lot more confident about what you're doing, maybe even have better market control. It is a big issue, and it creates a huge barrier. One thing I should note too, then, if we pass that on to the consumer, and a consumer has to pay $700 for a 10 by 10, well, they're not storing a bunch of used mattresses and IKEA tables, and it's causing the consumer demand to drop too, because they're being super considerate on what do they really need to store, and how can they minimize the space they need. So it is tightening. It's naturally tightening some of the demand side too.
And just for those following along, $700 Canadian is about 500 US. And for a 10 by 10, that is nuts. Like, I'm in San Francisco, and it's about $350 for a 10 by 10, and so that's crazy.
Yeah. So if you're a student or someone starting a startup business, and now you're moving from home to need a locker, you're going to think about it, right? You're going to think about it a little bit more and think about your efficiencies. So, I think in the U.S., in some parts of the U.S. where you still have a storage locker for under $100 American a square foot, or pardon me, for a 10 by 10, they're still storing things that maybe they should think about. But it's okay because it's $100 a month. Whereas here, they're like, no, I'm not storing that. I'm gonna just let that go. Maybe I don't even need the space. We also
does that come with the expectation that the facility needs to be really nice, like security and all that at a higher price point, or not?
I mean, it needs. I wouldn't say it necessarily comparatively has to have better bells and whistles, but it needs the bells and whistles. Yeah, it still needs to be competitively priced. So, and I find most facilities that are being developed now are pretty nice. Like regardless of whether it's in a rural community or in the city, but definitely in the city, you know, they're going to have to make a $40 million facility profitable, and taxes are serious. The taxes are a problem. Our annual property taxes are very challenging. So you're really going to have to make a good unit. And if you don't have the bells and whistles, you might not get the client to charge that price. So I find everyone has to be at the same bar. There's always we're always trying to push ahead economically, but to add that next best thing that doesn't cost a whole lot more but offers benefit. But I find consumers at the end of the day, they are price sensitive, particularly at times like this.
I'm curious, what are those like must-haves? Excuse me, like Bluetooth locks, like motion sensors, like where's that list kind of start and end for like must-haves for some of these things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it actually goes back to old school storage metrics. It's you have to have a good location. So you have to be close like that. There's no ignoring that. People want to be close to their storage. It better look clean and safe. So if you don't convey a level of security, safety, comfort, they're not coming. And you better have a functional team on both website, call center, or your on-site staff. All have to present a very consistent, clean, professional, safe, secure image, and that's the bar. So then's the price. It's like, okay, and how much are you? Because if a person doesn't feel comfortable with where they're storing, they're particularly in the city market at $400 or $500 US in pricing, they're not going to store there if they're not comfortable. So that's really required. The Bluetooth locks, it's an interesting thing because it's still pretty early here. So a lot of folks don't immediately differentiate between the two. I'm sure once they come on site for the site tour, it starts to click in their brain, like, oh, hold on, this is different, and maybe I do like this better. But the website better convey the message pretty fast, and I do notice in our current state, because demand has, I feel like demand in 2024 was one of the lowest I've ever seen in all my decades of storage. I do find price discounts are getting a little wild right now, and people are definitely trying to draw fewer leads. Because there are fewer leads, they're using the discount to at least get the lead and then manage from there. And again, I think there's just an acceptable level of bells and whistles that you have to have, and after that, it might not move the needle as much. Yeah.
So outside of ULOC, you also play a pretty critical role in the Canadian Self-Storage Association, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about some of the key issues that you've tackled recently at CSSA, and kind of what you guys are expecting, any trends that you might be looking towards the next few years?
Yeah. So I've been a part of both the Canadian Self Storage Association and the Vancouver Island Storage Association, which is a very local association nearby, at the board level for quite some time. And I love sharing information. I love very passionate about the industry, about things that can help us, but things we have to be wary of too. So a lot of the Canadian Self Storage Association work has worked with members on just keeping them updated on things that are happening in our industry, be it crime, be it best practices in how to lease, how to auction, how to manage your client base, obviously development and construction trends. We have battled off and on areas of lien legislation, because in Canada there actually isn't a self-storage specific lien law. Unlike the United States, where each state has generally its own lien law for self-storage, we don't have that in Canada. Canada is contract law. And as an association, we actually went to produce provincial laws in each province, and we actually found that it was like opening Pandora's box. So we started to open it in hopes that we could take some of the best American practices from the states that have great practices in lien legislation and bring that into the Canadian government. And what we saw was it was a bureaucratic mess. Like you were going to have to start registering a toaster for 2 years before you could sell it. And like, so we closed that door pretty fast. And we've decided to just educate members on great best practices to auction lockers, to go through liens, and how to operate your business in a high integrity, policed way, in hopes that we can keep the industry out of trouble from rogue. There may still be a rogue operator, but that is not the standard that we hold the industry to. So, a lot of great standardization practices, great examples of how to go about different procedures that are smart ways, of great ways that benefit the customer and the storage operation. And we've been taking on a lot of property tax initiatives and income tax initiatives for owners. And that's been challenging too. Property taxes are very fractured across the country. So there's no one taxation authority on property tax. So it's caused us to really work with local and provincial groups to try and find a smart way to create property tax. And then on an income tax side, our industry got classified as passive income decades ago. And I can tell you, my business, it doesn't feel passive at all. I mean, I get maybe the real estate side, but operationally, a self-storage facility, there's a lot that goes on. It's pretty wild. So we've been trying to reclassify because we are.
Are there any other real estate assets that are considered passive?
Yeah, so I think RV parks are also passive. Interestingly enough, hotels were originally going to be passive as well, but back then, decades ago, there was a lobbyist for hotels that got hotels brought into the active tax code or tax segmentation, and unfortunately, self-storage was so new back then. Like, there was no association. You didn't who do you call for a unified voice? And they just put it in the passive form. Yeah, so it's been an uphill battle, and we were actually close a few years ago with one of the the government that was in power at the time, and they even put it on the budget to reclassify. Like, we were making great gains, but unfortunately, that government fell, and so it switched to another party, and it was not of interest to that party, and that's the current party that rules today. So, it's an ongoing battle.
So if I'm following, then it seems like this passive classification, is that hurting the industry, at least hurting the industry's ability to attract capital, like investment on that portion?
Yeah, I mean, down the way it does. Yeah, it just means that we're less. If we have net income, I mean, we could be taxed 20% higher than an active business, and so that takes a lot off the table, right? And it changes the whole business model. As an association too, we're pushing for things on like a 1031 tax deferred exchange that you have in the US. Right now, if you have a storage facility in Canada and you sell, you have to pay a lot of tax on your gain, which means that you sold your site for X, but now you really only have a lot, your proceeds are much smaller, and yet if you're my age, you got to go do it again, and you have a lot less to. I think that's actually a big difference in the U.S. and Canada on the entrepreneurial economic growth side. In the U.S., there's a lot of enticements, encouragements, both at banking and government, to make businesses flourish and have a chance at great success. Whereas in Canada, every time you succeed, they take a pretty good chunk. And it's like, I almost feel like I shouldn't have sold because now I'm less a business than I was before selling, and I got to go do it again. So those are big initiatives for the Storage Association and a lot of member advocacy.
That's awesome. I love that. I love getting to nerd out about the ins and outs of kind of north of the border differentiations and stuff and tax laws is something that like the average person doesn't normally think about. To bring us back, like before we go into like the closing rounds of rapid fire and hot takes, I've got kind of two questions. Going back to think of the future, we limited you the first go round of designing that future self-storage facility. No limits this go round. Like, what's that facility of the future that you dream of always having, and when do you see us getting there?
Oh man, I mean, when I really step off into space, so to speak, um, I see a lot of automated storage. Like, your downtown facility, you can have a great location, but that doesn't actually need to be your entire storage facility there. It just needs to be the front end. You could have a loading bays. So both for load, you could actually load into your locker. And why doesn't your locker transport behind the scenes to a facility nearby and be categorized? Sort of like in Florida, they had that robotic storage facility with all the, like, a parking garage with the tray systems. You can tray down, you can tray up, you can have a great sales office, a great loading bay that's really accommodating, well lit, so it can improve all the aspects. Obviously, from a crime perspective, harder to steal from a storage locker that's buried inside a technological building. And with automation now of driving, like, there's lots of ways to automate we're heading out. I was just in a Waymo in the States, right? There's, that car, it could be transporting a storage container and then taking that storage to where it needs to go to its loading area. And you can really high class your drop, your pickup points, your office location. So I see a lot of bridging of automation and being really smart with real estate to have an amazing site and amazing locations. But you don't need the whole thing right there, right? You use technology behind the scenes, and I think consumers, if they're not, if they're seeing a great face to it, they're getting what they need in a very comfortable, clean environment. It's adding security and convenience on the pickup drop off. I think there's a good mix there. It will be tricky though, right? It's hard to bridge all those gaps, and that needs a lot of technology. But the way technology is moving, man, I don't know, a couple more years, we could be there.
Yeah. Future is going to be really cool. Drone's going to drop a robot off at your front door, and it's going to take the couch from the second floor downstairs for you, put it on the automated moving van, take it to the facility, unload it, and put it in there, and then just take it to your next place whenever you need it. To bring it back, all right, like multi-generational storage operator, like, what's one lesson? What's one story, piece of advice that you want to pass on to like the next set of people that are coming into the industry?
The next set of advice. I mean, this is it's sort of an old set of advice, but it's fallen on a lot of deaf ears, unfortunately. And it's the data side, right? Data now is awesome, and it tells us so much. But the problem is there is mountains of data, and people keep picking data that tells them the story they want. And as opposed to like just getting the data and bringing the honest story forward on whether how we should do in our pricing strategies, how we should run our operations, who is our client, website or location, and how to acquire. Right now, I see a lot of competitors pressured, and they're causing mass drops in as principals. We got through the good times. I'm seeing a lot of operators head to discounting pandemonium. Right? They're just like, drop the price. I know those sites. Like, when I look at their data from afar, I don't even have all their data, but from what I can see, they're paying more for that acquisition. They might not realize it right now, but they're actually losing money in the lifespan of that acquisition. And I don't know about you, I can't pay negative $200 to acquire a client that then leaves me. Like, I can't. I need to make a business, and so I'm seeing a lot of people, yeah, yeah. But they're not using data properly, and it's there's always that guy who has a site. He's like, this would be a great site. he sort of manipulates all the data to fit his project, when in actuality, we, educated operators look and go, well, I guess that'll be a buying opportunity in 3 years after he opens. And so I really stress that people don't sell themselves on their own project too hard. I get that you got to promote the project to investors, and you got to promote the project to the bank, and you need a project that is valuable to your consumers. But you want to really look at your data, because 5 years from now, you want to have a great, successful project that's yours, as opposed to you had to sell it and rent up. And I guess it's going to be, another experienced operator is going to buy it instead. That doesn't sound like a great business plan. But use your data. There's so much of it. Sift through it, pick what's important, use it properly.
Thanks, Robert. I appreciate that.
All right, I think we're ready for some quick fires. Are we ready?
Canadian edition.
Yeah, I don't even know what comes at me, but sure, let's dive in.
So I'm going to start. Hopefully this is easy. Kind of the flip of what Mason, his first question. What's the best piece of advice your parents gave you about the business that still holds true today?
Take a deposit. If someone comes at you and they say they want it, sign them up, collect a deposit or collect the full rent, and carry on. Don't keep selling. Don't say, "Oh, pay me when you come back in," because in our environment, you don't take that money. The next competitor's taking that money, so you need to take the money and know when to stop selling. Yep.
If you could snap your fingers and fix one regulatory issue in Canada overnight, what would it be?
I don't know if the regulatory fits into the business taxation area. We just need better tax treatment that encourages business growth, not just in self-storage, but in all small business in Canada. Like, we need government to recognize the importance of businesses. And instead of squeezing us every last drop out of us, we need them to work with us, because the more success that business has, the more success local government, community growth, and jobs and employment. We need the red tape on development and access to good financing. And I know that'll make it tougher for me too, because I should have more competitors. But it's just healthy for a local economy to not have all these barriers, and you can't treat us like we're some sacred cow, because eventually cows start falling over.
I love that. Empowering the local community. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually ask this question a lot too. Just in general in the podcast, it's a recurring theme. But thinking outside the industry, so looking outside the industry, is there anywhere that you derive inspiration from to run your business, or maybe personally to keep you going?
Gosh, you know what? I love all things fun, space. I'm a big sci-fi buff. I love adrenaline a little bit. Maybe that's just a product of all of us these days. And I love learning. So I don't get to read as much as I like, but audiobooks, man, podcasts, bring it. I'm actually sort of new to the podcast world too, and as I peek in there, I'm like, holy cow, this is awesome. But you know what? Just always learning, and always testing your own beliefs. Listen to stuff that goes against the grain. I do love though how Star Wars and Star Trek, all these gadgets they thought of seem to be coming into action today. And you're like, man, those guys in their imagination years ago are leading some of the greatest things today. And so you almost want to be in that space of how do I take that forward now, right? So I get a lot of inspiration off that, and I get a lot of, just like this podcast. I love talking to my peers in storage and sharing these ideas, and sort of looking for that wow factor. Let's think outside the box and have fun. Life's too short. Might as well choose to have fun.
I love that. I always find it like a fun fact. I wish I remembered the actual. I'm gonna be paraphrasing here, and I might get a companies wrong, but I think there was some type of lawsuit. Maybe the iPad, from Apple, and then the tablet from Microsoft, or maybe it was somebody else, right? Either way, they got into a lawsuit. It's like who had, who created it first type deal. And the short story of it all was that lawsuit got dropped because it was in the Creative Commons side, because in Star Trek there is already a product that was a tablet or whatnot, touchscreen, that was already in public culture, pop culture, and so they were able to drop the suit because of that. So
oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's really,
that sounds familiar.
really
actually, I do remember hearing that.
Yeah, I wish I remembered the details. You just made me remember that. So
yeah, those guys were ahead of the time. They were amazing.
Yeah. All right, one last one, unless anyone else has anything. But what should operators be doing right now to ensure they're ready for the future, for what's to come?
Yeah, you know what? All operators should be looking at their operations, their data, and making their operations better. Like, you know what? Looking for ways to like it's the old economics, right? Maximize your revenues, minimize your expense, make yourself a really strong operation. I think we're up against a little bit of hard times right now. Obviously, there's a lot of noise, but the reality is, it was a challenging year on the demand side last year. That even though interest rates are actually quite low from a 100-year perspective, the slightly higher interest rates did slow demand of our consumer. And so now is a great time to look within and improve your business model. Take time to train, use technology that's efficient where you can, and just make your business a really strong, robust model that can stand the test of time and all the things that will come out of left field that you don't see. And then work with your team and your community. Like, just focus there, because that's what counts, right? You know what's happening way out there. You can worry about it, but it's not going to help you. So just tinker with all your systems and make them strong.
That's awesome. I got a few to bring it home and close this out a little bit. Get a little personal, Robert. We really appreciate you joining today and just nerding out with us a little bit. Any rituals, routines that you have that help you stay grounded on a day-to-day basis as a business owner?
Rituals and routines. I can always get better at rituals and routines. You know what? Positive thinking, being thankful. I do, my EA has actually been really helpful in getting me on lists. And I belong to a couple different organizations like Strategic Coach and EOS that are very much about what's the most important thing today on the prioritization list and staying focused and knocking priorities off. I'd love to get to the gym more. I always feel better. And that also helps on the positive side too. But I got 4 teenagers and they kibosh some of my routine. Actually, they really do. It's a bit of a roller coaster routine, right?
But your routine is their routine.
Positive thinking. Yeah.
They keep you young. Don't lie.
They do keep me young and gray-haired at the same time. But I can't understate being thankful for what we have now. As North Americans, we are super lucky with a lot of things we have today. We think we're sometimes woe is me, but in actuality, we're like pretty darn lucky. And I think keeping a positive face and keeping it real, like focus on your family, your business, your priorities in life, your friends, right, are good. And on a routine basis, I always like to have a travel plan too.
Nice.
Like, get out there and learn and explore, see the other things that are happening in the world, both local and afar, and spread that sort of helps with world understanding, right? But so I know that's a heck of a messy routine question.
That's perfect. Hey, gratitude was the answer there, so I appreciate that. A couple more.
Yeah.
What's the go-to coffee order?
Oh, Americanos. I just love a great, and I'm gonna throw brand down. Sorry, Starbucks Americano. I don't know what.
There you go.
Just the smooth, perfect. I don't do well with the rest of their coffee, but Starbucks Americano, something feels like world peace right in the cup.
Starbucks, if you see a spike on your Americano sales, thank us. I really thank Robert.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Exactly. All right. I got 2 very specific Canadian ones to close us out. Favorite small Canada town that people need to go visit?
Well, it's not small anymore. I was going to say Whistler, just because it's my local backyard here. It's just behind me. Spent a lot of time, grew up on those ski mountains. Very special to me. More popular now in summer than winter. So much to do there. But I would also throw a call out to Fernie, British Columbia. I think it's a great summer town that's super, super neat treat and a place to visit. And it's off the radar still.
I love it. I'm going to be in a Banff Whistler area to do some hiking this summer.
Nice.
So I'm excited for that. All right. The last one,
awesome.
Most underrated Canadian food, and what should I try when I get to Canada?
Most underrated Canadian food. I mean, oh man, that's a hard one because we have.
I mean, I love poutine, so like poutine's my go-to when I'm close to the border. But
I was gonna say poutine, but what's really funny about that is I was at as an SSA conference in Telluride, and we came off the mountain for après. So it's me. I think I was the only Canadian. Everyone else is American. I've known them for eons in the industry. Great group, and I saw poutine on the menu, and I'm like, oh. Well, we got to have a little Canadiana. And this poutine arrived and everyone dove into it. It had the white gravy that you'd have on like biscuits. It had shredded cheese that was not cheese curds. And they mowed through it and they all looked at me and said, man, that was delicious. That poutine. And I was like, oh my, that was sacrilege. Like that wasn't poutine. That was like, I don't know. It was barely French fry. Like it was bad. But yeah, they ruined it. But they loved it, and I didn't have the heart to tell them fully at that point in time about that. But we have great steaks. In Alberta, we had some great steak. Tons of things you can do with maple syrup. Right now, we're doing a buttermilk chicken. It comes in bite-sized pieces, and it's with maple syrup, and it's nice and crispy, and it's a light crisp too. Buttermilk chicken, maple buttermilk chicken. If you ever see that in a little bistro, cafe, or restaurant, or particularly on the side, like the appetizer, you should do that. That's hard to find a bad one. So good.
I'm so stoked about coming up north of the border and getting to explore and taste some of the taste as well. And no white gravy on the fries.
No white gravy. No, we have a great food scene, particularly like Vancouver. It's a really sophisticated, deep food scene, hugely cultural. If you are in the prairies though, and someone offers you a prairie oyster, think twice before you eat that.
Heard.
They got a lot of groundhog. I think they're prairie dogs, right? And it's don't do that.
All right, one last question for you. How can our listeners learn more about ULOC? Canadian Self-Storage Association and just be able to follow along your journey?
Yeah, you know what? Obviously, you can go to the website, CSSA.ca, but it's always better whenever you are in Canada to drop by in person, come by our conferences. I'm at ISS and SSA, and I'm going to be at the Arizona State Conference next week. So seek out a Canadian, and you can always chat with us if you don't want to find us on the web. The web's a sterile version of us anyway, right? So introduce yourself or come visit come visit me up in Vancouver, Canada. I'm always keen. I still have a moniker called Storage Madman, and it pops up in different places. If you see that in a forum group, it's probably me because very few people have that. And
love the name.
Can always engage me direct. Yeah,
that's awesome, Robert. This is awesome. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll be there at ISS too. So excited to have some FaceTime and reconnect.
Yeah, I'll track you guys down. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time today, Robert. This was great.
As always, thanks for listening. You can find out more information about this episode and more at selfstorage.lab.com.